Brightside University is responsible for the preservation of library materials and ensuring that there is reliable access to this information, regardless of the form in which the information is found. This presentation will explain what we preserve at Brightside University and why, to give you a better understanding of our preservation practices and how they may relate to your role as a staff member of the library. Those responsible for making decisions about what materials are preserved will play a role in shaping our cultural heritage. As the Australian Library and Information Association states in their Statement of Preservation, preserving the intellectual property and cultural heritage is the unarguable responsibility of librarians and information professionals, regardless of the form in which the information is found. Our preservation activities and responsibilities are directly linked to the university's mission statement and goals. Brightside University is an academic library which produces research materials including PhD and master's theses, scholarly publications and associated research data. We are committed to building and sustaining a collection which enables learning and advancement of knowledge by ensuring long-term access and discoverability to our collection and research output. With this being said, what is it that we preserve? We recognise that the sheer abundance of information objects available means that we will not be able to preserve everything. Therefore, we must choose preservation strategies which are sustainable and reflect the mission and goals of our organisation. It is for this reason that we have focused our preservation strategies on the following: materials deemed to be of educational value, PhD and master's theses, and scholarly publications and associated research data produced by the university. Preservation actions must take into account the needs of the user. As an educational institution, the primary users of the library are the Brightside University faculty, students and staff. Therefore, the library takes into account the educational value of materials in the context of an educational institution. Preserving library materials of educational value in the subject areas taught by the university is important to ensure that the users of the library have access to materials which satisfy their needs. Library materials which are deemed to be of educational value are those which are within the subject areas taught at the university and related to the university's academic mission and goals. These can be materials like recommended and required textbooks and academic journals. For the physical collection of textbooks and journals, established standards and guidelines for best storage are followed. Brightside University follows guidelines for environmental storage set by the Australian Institute for the Conservation of Cultural Materials. For more information about the guidelines which we follow, you can have a look at the link below. Brightside University has a responsibility to preserve PhD and master's theses produced by students of the university. Our preservation strategy is to preserve a copy of each deposited item in the format in which it was deposited. For example, keeping the original bound copy of older theses or keeping the original file format of a digital thesis. Keeping the original copy of theses follows the preservation principle to keep the original. We also preserve as much preservation metadata as possible. The type of format the thesis was in when it is initially submitted will affect our preservation actions towards that item. Creators of digital theses are asked to submit a copy in a file format as recommended by the Library of Congress's recommended format statement. Information on these formats can be found in the first link on this page. Preservation is the responsibility of all, from the creators of the objects to the users of the objects. By submitting their theses in a recommended file format, creators are helping to ensure their work can be accessed by future generations. For copies which are submitted digitally, we also preserve as much metadata as possible to provide access in the future. This metadata establishes an informational frame of reference that remains attached to that object. It encompasses information on custodial history of the object, validation of the object's authenticity, preservation actions, intellectual property rights, and information about the technical aspects needed to access the digital resource. The Open Archival Information System is used to frame the library's digital work. More information can be found on this link here. Ensuring long-term access to digital theses requires active managed care. Digital objects can be difficult to preserve because they quickly become obsolete, and they are linked to specific hardware applications and software. New formats or versions of formats may introduce file format obsolescence as newer and newer generations of software phase out support for older formats. In some cases, information within a file format can be unusable if they are not compatible with newer software. It is critical that the university employs digital preservation standards such as those mentioned above, because the amount of materials published in traditional formats is declining. Digital objects make up a large portion of the library's collection, and we need digital preservation strategies in place to ensure that these objects are available for the future. For theses which were originally submitted to the repository in the format of a physical bound copy, we create a digital surrogate for the object and keep the original copy. With a digital surrogate, we can help preserve the original copy as it is being handled less often while still being accessible. The last type of library materials that our preservation strategy focuses on are the scholarly publications and associated research data created by those affiliated with the university. These can be published works created by staff or students of the university, or research which has been funded by the university. We have a responsibility to ensure that the research output is discoverable and accessible as it reflects the work completed within the university. To ensure that our research output is discoverable, staff and students are required to make research outputs openly available by depositing an appropriate version into the university's institutional repository. We also encourage open access publishing for peer-reviewed journal articles and conference papers. Now that we are aware of the types of objects which Brightside University preserves, the question is, why do we preserve? Preservation plays a role in shaping our cultural heritage. By establishing preservation strategies, we adhere to the standards of relevant bodies of authority. We can assure that the university's research output is preserved for future generations to use and interpret. For an academic library, preservation can also increase the visibility of the university and help attract quality students, faculty, and staff. Finally, preservation is a key component in the sustainability of cultural property. Meaningful preservation will determine the information future generations will be able to access and the knowledge available to them to build on.